This video is just going to be a quick overview of bibliographic sources. So sources all about books, 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 and other resources. So the definitions, we have two. A bibliography, which is a systematic list or enumeration of written works by a specific author or on a given subject, or that share one or more common characteristics. So basically this is kind of a list of resources organized thematically. I guess this second one isn't a definition, but it says that it's important to note that bibliographical resources are not always going to be bibliographies. So there are three different uses for bibliographic sources: to identify or verify information, to locate materials, or to select materials for the collection or for research. So when you're answering bibliographical questions, you may find yourself going through these questions. You want to find out that if the library owns the book that the patron wants. So do library records show that the library owns the book? Secondly, you want to make sure that the book that the user is looking for really exists, if it really has been published. Third, you want to make sure that the user's information is correct, or if not, if it is partially correct. And lastly, if the information is not completely correct, did the user get the information about the book from a print source, or maybe it was just garbled in oral communication? So there's two kind of tasks here. The first one is locating the material, and then the second task is verifying the information. So, and that it goes back and forth. You try to locate, you can't, then you have to verify the information in order to locate. So there are several different kinds of bibliographies. There are current bibliographies, so those are lists of books or materials that are profiled close to their publication. So, and they're going to be considered current when the bibliography is released, but once the bibliography has been released for a while, then they will become retrospective. And a retrospective bibliography covers materials published during a different time frame. So a retrospective bibliography is a snapshot of specific resources at a specific time. National bibliographies usually list all of the materials published in one specific country. So some people say that the Library of Congress catalog is the only thing that we have close to a national bibliography. There are some countries that do publish national bibliographies, so all of the resources published in 1 year in one country. Trade bibliographies are publications that exist to provide the information necessary to select and acquire recently published materials. So this is going to be a list of books that have recently been published. They maybe have been published by a specific publisher, so that publisher is going to give you a trade bibliography of all of the things that they have published to help you choose their books, if you will. Library catalogs are lists of materials that are held in the collection of a particular library. Union catalogs are lists of materials held in more than one library, like OCLC could be considered a union catalog. There are bibliographies of bibliographies, so they're lists of bibliographies, and they're helpful maybe when you're trying to locate a list of works on a particular subject. So you said, well, I need a bibliography of resources on sport. So maybe you have a book with bibliographies listed in it. You can go to that and use that as a resource. The last kind of bibliography is subject bibliographies. So these are lists of materials that relate to a specific topic. So these are very prevalent. When you're evaluating bibliographic resources, you want to look at the publisher and the compiler's authority. Is the publisher or the compiler an expert in their field? Do they have an agenda for publishing a bibliography of these sources? Because bibliographies are used to identify and verify information, the information that they contain should be accurate. So you want to double check and make sure that the bibliographic entries contained in a bibliography are correct. The scope or the domain of items selected for inclusion should be stated by the compilers in a preface or a foreword. Also, reason for exclusion should be explicitly stated, so you can understand why things were included, why things weren't included. You get an idea of what is included in the whole bibliography. There are many different ways that bibliographies can be arranged. They may be alphabetized by author, or by title, or by subject. They could be classified according to a scheme like the Library of Congress classification system or the Dewey Decimal classification system, and we will look at a bibliography that is organized by classification scheme. Any of these arrangements can be helpful, but it's really just important to realize which one will be most helpful at the time to your users. For example, elementary school students would probably benefit most from an alphabetical arrangement rather than one arranged by classification scheme. So lastly, it's important to evaluate the currency of a bibliographic source. You should determine what the delay is between the date of publication and the time at which the publication is entered into the bibliography. You'll also want to be aware of whether the list is updated, and if so, how often. So now we're going to just look at a very minute selection of bibliographic sources. So the first one that we're looking at here is the literary marketplace. And the literary marketplace is a directory of the publishing industry. It's got contact information for U.S. publishers, literary agents, editorial services, trade associations, book trade courses, awards and prizes, books and magazines for the trade, public relations, book reviews, book clubs, manufacturers, pre-press services, distributors and wholesalers, consultants, translators, and artisan art services. So anything that you may possibly need to publish a book, you can find contact information for that person or industry in the literary marketplace. Next, we have the American Reference Books Annual, and this contains reviews of reference books and electronic sources. It's published by Libraries Unlimited, which is a huge publisher of reference books and library science resources. American Reference Books Annual regularly reviews dictionaries, encyclopedias, indexes, directories, bibliographies, guides, concordances, atlases, gazetteers, and other ready reference sources. So it's published annually. A new edition comes out every year. When new editions of reference books are published, the reviewer generally will compare the new edition to the old edition and lay out the differences between the two editions. Also, if print and online are published together, the reviewer will compare the print to the online and parse out all of the added features that the online or the print may have. So if you're looking to buy new reference material, this is definitely a good resource to consult. Next, we have the Senior High Core Collection, and this is a bibliography that contains materials. It's a selective list of fiction and nonfiction, along with bibliographies, that will give you titles that are considered to be core to any kind of collection. And this is part of a series, so this is the Senior High Core Collection. There's also the Middle and Junior High Core Collection and the Children's Core Collection. The nonfiction section you can see here, these are arranged by Dewey Decimal number. So under 629.45, you can see all of the recommended books for manned spaceflight. All of the titles are recommended, but there are titles listed in here that are more recommended or more highly recommended, and those are marked with an asterisk. I can't see any on this page, but oh yeah, there is one. The first one is recommended. It's got the asterisk at the end of it. Next, I'm going to just go through a couple periodicals that we have that are good bibliographical sources. So the first one is Booklist. Booklist is published by the American Library Association, or ALA, whichever you prefer to call it. And it's this quote is from Magazines for Libraries, another good bibliographic source that I do not have listed here. Booklist is the premier source of book and media reviews for librarians, educators, and the general reader. It features concise, engaging, recommended-only reviews of new and recent library materials in a variety of formats for youth and adults. Quality, as well as anticipated demand, are factors for inclusion, and special consideration is given to the needs of small and medium-sized libraries. Reviews contain critical evaluation of materials and point out limitations and weaknesses as appropriate. Each issue has a separate section of reference book reviews. So that is Booklist according to Magazines for Libraries. The Bulletin of the Center for Children's Books is published, I believe it is published monthly by the University of Illinois' Graduate School of Library and Information Science, my alma mater. So each year the Bulletin reviews nearly 1,000 new books for children and young people of all ages. Each signed review gives concise summaries and critical evaluations on the book's content, reading level, strengths and weaknesses, and quality of format, as well as suggestions for curricular use. The Bulletin has developed an explicit rating code to aid library selector purchasing. So this is a very useful tool in tight budgetary times. Regular features include an in-depth editorial on selected new titles and trends, reviews of new professional books, an annual selection of the year's most distinguished books called the Blue Ribbon List. This is a thoughtful, essential source for school, public, or academic librarians responsible for selecting children's literature. The last serial that I want to talk about is Publishers Weekly. So Publishers Weekly informs publishers, sellers, agents, and librarians on the creation, production, marketing, and sale of books in all formats. So it focuses mainly on U.S. publications. It covers industry news and book industry statistics. It provides critical reviews of print, audio, and ebooks, as well as in-depth author interviews. So Publishers Weekly is also very well known for its bestseller list that it publishes. And the reviews are very useful. They are the backbone of this publication. So those are three of the pretty big bibliographic serials. There's also School Library Journal and Hornbook, which are frequently used in school libraries.